We are back on Taking Care of Business on Koerner Radio, News Talk 1180, 1230 KGEO, and 1410 KERI. Clay, I really like Wayne Allen Root. We got to have him back.
Between you and Wayne, I couldn't get a word in. Both of you just talking.
Well, the poor guy's been on he's been on Rush Limbaugh's show this week. He's been on
Hannity.
He's
60
been on
stations,
Glenn Beck.
he said.
Yeah. Interesting guy. And his whole 4 years in Columbia, he never saw Barack Obama once. But what are you going to do? So the year is 1992. Dianne Feinstein takes over from Pete Wilson, filling out his expiring term, and she's been there ever since.
And nobody knows it.
Our next guest wants to change Senator Feinstein's residence. Change it back to the Bay Area, hopefully. Our guest by phone, the Republican candidate for U.S. Senate, Elizabeth Emken. Elizabeth, welcome to Taking Care of Business.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. Yes, she's definitely nowhere near California.
No.
Living next to Andrea Mitchell in Washington, D.C., just kind of occupying a ceremonial seat back there in the U.S. Senate.
Is Andrea Mitchell married to, what's his name?
Mr. Mitchell.
No, married to the ex-head of the Fed, Alan Greenspan. I think Mitchell's married to Greenspan. I'm not positive, but I think so. But that ought to tell you something. So, anyways, you're running for U.S. Candidate for U.S. Senate.
Exactly right.
And tell us a little bit about Elizabeth.
Well, I'd be happy to. You know, it's interesting. Did you see those 24 names on the ballot just this last primary?
Uh-huh.
So there's so one, the primary was a little bit like the Hunger Games. 24 went in, 2 came out. And it's just Feinstein and myself on the ballot on November 6th. So that's very good news. But just briefly, my background, I have dual degrees from UCLA, economics, political science, and I've had 2 careers, one at IBM doing cost and financial management for IBM US, and the second career was a draft. My son was diagnosed with autism, and I became an advocate for him and kids like him, and I founded and ran the government relations department at Autism Speaks, one of the nation's largest nonprofits, and from there I've done multiple pieces of federal legislation. I've had bills in 30 different states around the country, but it was Obamacare, let me tell you, that just was more than I could sit back and watch, and decided to throw my hat in the ring.
Elizabeth, that's Clay's favorite subject is Obamacare. We're both in the insurance business, so that's a real warm spot for him. The only thing about your bio that I'm a little concerned with is that you went to UCLA instead of USC. But
well, I can assure you that we have we actually participate on both sides there. My folks are USC. So we have the Trojan side of the room, and we have the Bruin side of the room. So you're well represented.
So, Elizabeth Emken, what are you going to do if you should get elected?
Well, the first thing I'm going to do is repeal Obamacare. It is, it's bad for kids with autism. It's bad for people with disabilities. It's bad for the elderly. It's bad for everyone. In my view, and healthcare is my area of expertise, if you take a problem, and without a doubt, there's problems with health care and health insurance, and we absolutely need some fixes, but Obamacare took a bad problem and frankly made it worse, which was quite a trick. But the Obama and his administration, Dianne Feinstein, managed to do it, and it must be undone. There's no saving this bill. And then I think we need to do some federal tax reform and simplify the tax code, lower corporate tax rates, and frankly, I think the root of a lot of our insurance, health insurance issues are in the federal tax code, since you guys, it's your bailiwick.
But in the Senate, you're not. How are you going to do anything, because you're not going to have the majority as of?
Sure, we are.
Well, you think so?
Absolutely.
Oh,
I think
I agree.
I'm a glass half full kind of gal, and I'm optimistic about our country and about our ability to recognize wrong track. Speaking of which, right now in California, 73% of Californians recognize we're on the wrong track. And that's saying something. When Californians are waking up and saying something's wrong here, when you're at the bottom of every relevant economic measure, and of course Dianne Feinstein has presided over the decline of our state since 1492, so it's time to turn it around, and people recognize it.
But it's still a blue state.
I don't believe that. I think that this is the opportunity, and this is the year to have a Reagan sort of revolution, not only across the country, but back here in California. We're a center-right state. We are. I'm traveling around the state. Dianne Feinstein is who knows where. She's off in, I don't know, I don't think they're letting her out anymore. But I'm traveling around the state, and there are more folks right now who recognize we're on the wrong track. Well, let me give you an example. We had a recent poll, Pepperdine Public Policy Institute Small Business Roundtable. 45% is what Dianne Feinstein is polling at right now.
See, and that's horrible.
20% undecided.
That's
what does
horrible.
that tell you?
That's horrible for an incumbent.
It's horrible. She's way under 50%.
Sure. Our guest by phone, Elizabeth Emken, Republican candidate for U.S. Senate. Talking about her travel or not traveling around the state, she refuses to debate you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, you know, why would she? What can she possibly say? She's been in the Senate on appropriations, has not produced a budget in 3.5 years. She's driven up our debt by $6.5 trillion in the last 6 years alone. The Feinstein moderate is a myth. Her voting record is identical to Nancy Pelosi, Barbara Boxer, and Harry Reid. She's voted down the Keystone XL pipeline twice. She's voted for Obamacare. What in the world would she tell the people of California? We have higher unemployment than almost anywhere else in the country. Our housing bust is worse than almost anywhere else in the country. We've been recently voted the worst state to do business in.
Surprise, surprise.
I mean, what in the world would Dianne Feinstein say if she were to stand next to me in a debate?
She supports high-speed rail.
You know, and don't get me started on that. Look, I'm not opposed to trains. I like trains, but in all seriousness, I mean, what is the agenda here that they are pushing? For every piece of evidence I've seen, it's unaffordable. The cost-benefit analysis isn't there. And by the way, that's what I did at IBM, and what we should be doing at both the federal and the state level before we decide on projects like high-speed rail. And when you think about going with rail, when you have people in the Central Valley who have been struggling, where we've had water projects on the table, on the design table, for decades, and Dianne Feinstein has done nothing to move those water structures into production. It's outrageous. And I encourage your listeners to go to my website, Emken2012.com, and read my entire water policy, because I intend to get water to the Central Valley.
Emken is Emken, for those that don't know, like Marty.
You know, going back to the debate concept, I was surprised, you know, not known as a bastion of conservative thought. The L.A. Times even got on Feinstein for not wanting to debate you. It's been 12 years since she's been involved in any kind of debate. Yeah,
the entitlement, the arrogance should be upsetting to every Californian, regardless of your ideology. I mean, if there's nothing Feinstein could say or do to talk you out of voting for her, wouldn't you still like to hear from her? As she's supposed to be back there working on your behalf, wouldn't you at least like to hear what it is she has supposedly done for you for the last 20 years, or 12 years at a minimum, and what would she do if after all this time she's sent back to the U.S. Senate yet again? I mean, at this point, does any Californian have any expectation that Dianne Feinstein will go back and somehow improve the performance over what she's done so far?
You know, you've answered the question right there, why she won't debate you. She doesn't do anything.
What she's doing, and here's more when you think about it, arrogance. She's got one of her guys who works for her, a really small guy, I might mention, out there just saying that I'm unworthy of her, that I lack the credentials and the credibility to debate her. You know, I have been in business. I saved IBM millions of dollars. I did hundreds of millions of dollars in budget analysis for IBM. I did it for quite a while. I've managed 200 people at one point at IBM. I've been, I've done 2 different federal pieces of legislation, one of them with Rick Santorum, by the way. I've had bills of a team of attorneys and advocates in 30 different states around the country. I managed 18 state bills at one time. That was at the height of my management. So if she's going to just send one of her men out to bash me, a woman. I'd like to know Dianne Feinstein. Let's hear about it. Let's hear more about this war on women and denigrating and degrading your challenger, and not even bothering to do it yourself, sending out one of your minions to do it.
Exactly.
It's really outrageous, and all Californians should be upset by Dianne Feinstein's unwillingness to come out here and see the people.
Definitely. When we come back from the break, let's pick up on the polls for Feinstein. Our guest by phone, Elizabeth Emken, Republican candidate for the U.S. Senate. We'll be back in a moment on Taking Care of Business on Koerner Radio News Talk 1180.